Weeks before the January 14th general election, Uganda's intelligence services were working on raw intelligence that radical members of the National Unity Platform Party were planning to burn down Kampala and make the country ungovernable after the elections. In the ever-changing face of cloak and dagger games, there was a dark conspiracy theory that a hostile neighboring state was planning to take advantage of the fluid situation to light a fuse that would snowball into a street insurrection, as has happened in other countries. On 19th December 2018, the Sudanese revolution began with street protests across the country against the rising cost of living, but morphed into sustained civil disobedience for 8 months. On 11th April 2019, the army deposed President Omar al-Bashir.
Is to maintain public order.
In Burkina Faso, demonstrations and riots began in Ouagadougou in October 2014 after then-President Blaise Compaoré attempted to change the constitution to run again and extend his 27 years in office. Radical youths set fire to the National Assembly, the ruling party's offices, and other government buildings. President Compaoré resigned the presidency and fled to Ivory Coast. Today, in Uganda, the jury is still out on whether this intelligence information was accurate or whether it was embellished by security outfits to feather their nests during the high-octane season of presidential campaigns, or if it was a pretext to crack down on the opposition ahead of the January 14th polls. In an attempt to ostensibly nip this revolution in the bud, security personnel orchestrated and perfected a brutal kidnap campaign whose weapon of choice was the Toyota Hiace drone, which draws comparisons with the Peugeot and Fiat, which were popular with the State Research Bureau, Idi Amin's dreaded security operatives at the heart of kidnappings during the Reign of Terror between 1971 and 1979. So brutal has the campaign been that it has attracted a nearly violent backlash. On the night of 29th March, some residents of Chebando in Kawempe Division set fire to a drone that had been parked by the roadside. Elsewhere, the sight of this vehicle instills fear that locals often run into hiding. But this man, who we will call Mukisa to protect his identity, was not so lucky to escape those pursuing him. This interview was conducted at a secret location for the safety of the source.
Mukiro abasajja bali bambadde engoye eza police ne batteeka mu mmotoka ya drone, abalala baali mu leeya. Drone yali nzibu nnyo, mwalimu emiggo mingi, twagenda twepanze nga migaati, ne batutwala mu kifo gye tutaategeera, ne batwambaza bo gye bayita masiki naye nga kalinga akakookolo kakusiba bulago ke tubaddemu ebbanga eggwanvu eryo litumazeeyo.
Mukisa, who was snatched a few days into the new year in the central part of the country, tells of the torture he and others endured. He claims that during his captivity, men and women were being kept in the same spaces. Mukisa does not know where he was being held. However, he says the atmosphere indicated that the safe house was near a water body.
Tubadde mu bulumi obw'ekitalo obutagambika, omuli emiggo, kusula nga muyimiridde. Tubadde tubeera ne kamasiki oba kayita akakookolo essaawa 24 nga tekavaako, nga neemukuliyo siba mumwa gwokka n'olya.
According to Mukisa, towards the end of their incarceration, prisoners were given first-in-class drugs so that their wounds could heal quickly to remove the evidence of torture. first-in-class drugs are used as a new and unique mechanism of action for treating a medical condition. On his release, Mukisa, who was accused of being a terrorist and a rioter, was dumped in a swamp at 2 a.m. He hitched a ride to his home. Mukisa has not appeared before a competent court of law so that he can formally be charged. Timothy Kalyegira, a journalist and researcher of Uganda's political history, who has previously been detained on criminal libel charges in Luzira prison in 2011, says depending on where one stands, the kidnap campaign seems to have had the intended results.
If you're a neutral or a Bobi Wine NUP supporter, you will say, you see, they misread us, they misrepresented us as violent. We're not violent, we've said from the beginning, we're peaceful people. The government's point of view and with security agencies might be that the reason there's been no uprising is because of that very thing that you're condemning us for, the picking up of individual ringleaders. In other words, we nipped this in the bud.
Last month, the government released a list of the people it admitted were being held in different prisons and safe houses. In a February 23rd letter to the Daily Monitor, the president admitted that at least 51 of the missing persons were in custody of the Special Forces Command, an elite commando unit.
Then the ones arrested by the commandos were two groups. There were 59 from 18 from Kampala, 11 from PG, 17 from Chotera, and 5 from Nakasongola. All those, their names are here.
The command structure of those in charge of these kidnaps is opaque. These security operatives appear to be highly trained, seem to have unconventional covert and overt methods of operation, and follow a similar pattern where they track down and isolate perceived suspects in drones. Some of these kidnaps are executed in a daring style during the day, but many others are in the dark of the night where victims are raided at their homes. There is also a pattern about the arrests, as many of those detained have Muslim names. This man, who we shall call Rukundo, was kidnapped on January 20th. Rukundo believes he was incarcerated in the basement of the offices of the Chieftaincy of Military Intelligence, or CMI, before being transferred to the military police barracks in Machindia. David Pulkol, with institutional hindsight as a former Director General of the External Security Organization from 1996 to 1999 and from 2001 to 2003, says he finds it odd that security agencies have resorted to kidnaps, which are not officially sanctioned methods of fighting crime and gathering intelligence.
To get security systems to resort to methods that we are running away from, methods that were akin to the Amin's State Research Bureau of those days, to other elements, whether in Obote II government. So the past is rich with what we must seek to avoid. It's not like the end justifies the means, that you can get out of the Constitution briefly, and so long as, or out of the law, and then so long as you restore order. That's the wrong way to go about it.
Many other people are still missing, like George Kasumba, who stood for political office in Chisamola village, Kasali Town Council in Chotera district. His sister, Jane Chomgisha, says her brother was kidnapped during the early hours of January 19th. Using phone network records, Chomgisha believes her brother is being held in an area in the cattle corridor between Liantonde, Rushere, and Chazanga.
Tetulekeranga okunonya. Tushanonya n'olwaleero. Kuba n'omusango gwagenzeeko nga kwali nga mu kkooti e Masaka. Alina abaana, alina omukyala. bali mu mbeera era yakubonaabona kuba Kasumba George yabadde alabirira famire ng'oggyeko mukyala we n'abaana be wabula ne bakadde be okusinga yabadde abalabirira bakadde baffe.
There is some scanty evidence that some of those kidnapped people might have been involved in criminal activity. However, if there is an existential threat to peace and to the government, Pulkol has a suggestion on how this threat can be tackled.
Your intelligence collection is arrest, torture, interrogate, and then you get intelligence. That's not the way to collect intelligence. That intelligence must precede your arrest, so that the moment you arrest, you have information already. Otherwise, you'll end up arresting anybody, anywhere, anytime, and then it gets out of hand. So in that case, who is this group? Okay? How big is the group? What is the command structure of the group? How is this group communicating and passing that is upsetting our stability, that is affecting life and property of our citizens, that is actually responsible for this criminality? So it's your job to penetrate, okay, and get into it. You cannot get that information just by, arrest, torture, and release, and that they are cooperating now, and so forth. So it must be intelligence-led operations.
Kaliejira alludes to the possibility that other unlawful operators could take advantage of the situation, saying this could explain the discrepancies in the number of people who are missing. However, there is no evidence that a third force is kidnapping Ugandans.
And also, last year but one, 2019-2018, some of these refusal at all costs to have Bobby Wine perform any concert anywhere, no matter what. And they were willing to go through all the ridiculousness of stopping him and, cancelling concerts, deporting Yvonne Chaka Chaka, the South African singer, was because of that fear. What if Bobby Wine, the man of the moment with all this youth in the central region, is out at One Love Beach with his concert and bombs are planted under the stage? So in other words, sometimes even this government here, which some of us think is guilty of many crimes, sometimes governments don't quite tell you the truth, and sometimes they seem to be hiding things which only much later, especially when they've left power, do you get to hear the truth.
There could be a national security threat which government may be trying to deal with. And I think we need to recognize that, and citizens need to be mobilized to support government and work together with government and security agencies to deal with that threat.
None of the two men have been able to return to a normal life. Rukundo was charged in a military court with rioting and being found with military stores. He was released because he did not have a lawyer, and the army could not find a lawyer for him. Currently, he is on medication. For Mukisa, life has not been easy. Due to the torture he had to endure, Mukisa lost hearing in one ear. He lives in fear of his life.
Era kati sawa ino mutima wange ntambula naye ndi omutima wange banadamu ne bankwata ebyo nambirowooza muli nengamba naye Mukama Katonda ambeerewo kubanga wanzuula nti sina musango binyambi nkomawo nsigale n'obulumi bwange bwe bulema bwe nafunamu kuba omanyi bw'ofuna ekintu kyonna ku mubiri ng'okuza oluusi kafu akagenderemu omukadde akoga nsigale n'ebyo naye Mukama andeke nga ndi nyumiza abaana bange n'abazzukulu nga nkaddiye.
So what next for Ugandans? For a country with a history of turbulence, and for a regime that established the Justice Arthur Oda Commission of Inquiry into violations of human rights at the advent of capturing power in 1986, the latest cycle of violence stains the national conscience. Does the state have the candidness to sanction a probe and audit its conduct?
The arrests are going to continue. There's no other way you can have it. It's going to be pandagari, it's going to be constant tensions. Their fear is Buganda is now ripe for a third force. It is dry grass and there's a match there. The match that slit that dry grass, it's kind of smoldering, is NUP. Their fear is we'll bring in the petrol onto that dry grass.
So if you are special forces worth their name, they operate behind the enemy line. They have capabilities. They don't do these things. By now, the special forces would have brought Konyi from wherever he is. That's what special forces do, special SEALs. They don't do these things here. If you have lacked something to do, please don't do it on our citizens. Because there's no more enemies of the state out there. So, and therefore you think now you must have to be relevant to be involved here. Resist that. That's why you're called special forces. Special. What's special in using a drone to pick citizens and make them disappear and dump them in the swamp? So I just pray and I hope that they are not involved in this.
For our country to prosper, it must espouse the values of human rights. It's incumbent upon government to bring those who are currently detained to competent courts of law so that they can be tried. But as long as government delays to try the legions of NUP supporters who are currently being held in secret locations, it crosses the conscious line and breaks the bond of trust between itself and the civilian population. Gillian Nantume, NTV Panorama.